Welcome to Studio Chatter. I'm Craig Reeves. Today's guest is somebody who is very special, and that is none other than Mason Johnston. Mason is a very talented up-and-coming producer, singer-songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist from Atlanta, Georgia. They recently have completed a remastered version of their 2019 EP, The Other Sound, which will become available very soon. If you are listening to this on YouTube, you will find a link to their pre-save link in the description below. Click on that link because it helps the algorithm. I'm telling you, you're not going to regret doing it because this is really, really good music. In this discussion, Mason and I talk about their creative process, as well as their journey in reconciling their upbringing in classical music with pop music. I really enjoyed this discussion, and I hope you will too. So let's go ahead and get started. Mason Johnston, how are you?
I'm doing good, Greg. How are you?
I have been looking forward to this one because I'm a big fan of your music. I love your music a lot.
Appreciate it.
And I wanted you to come on the show because you are going to be releasing a remastered version of your 2019 project, The Other Sound. And
that is true, yes.
Guys, I'm going to let y'all know now that if you are listening to this on YouTube, go in that description and hit that pre-save link. Those pre-save links are super important because what it does is that it helps the algorithm and it helps to get the artist's music out to more people. So if you're listening to this, then hit that pre-save link. You're going to enjoy this very much. It's a very, very, very good album. So this is one of those projects that I listen to, and I don't know what genre to put it in, and I love it. I love the fact that there is no genre to put this in. Is that on purpose?
I don't know what to call it either, is the thing. I have just taken everything that I can get in terms of like my influences. And those range from, because I grew up from a classical upbringing.
You don't say.
I was classically trained, and then I moved into Atlanta. I got like a bunch of like sort of post-punk, math rock influences. Then I got hooked on Jacob Collier and Midair Thief, Animal Collective. Started getting into like the whole production side of things, avant pop, that stuff. And so what you end up with is this sound that's just kind of like a collage of all of my influences. Also, just the particular way that my brain works and my brain is wired. Like I tend towards certain things that kind of don't really align with the zeitgeist of sort of what you tend to hear in like popular music arrangements. So I guess it can turn into sort of an unrecognizable sound.
You march to the beat of your own drum. Your brain is wired differently from everybody else. You have a background as somebody who studied music. That sounds like a musician to me.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, because like everybody that I've had on this show has pretty much more or less said the same thing. You know, I was different as a kid, that sort of thing. I definitely felt different myself. So you really are somebody. I'm gonna talk about how I came to know you. So when I was doing a Twitch stream not long ago, you would come into I actually met you through Twitch because I was one day doing a Twitch stream and you come into the Twitch stream and you just start contributing and whatnot. And it's weeks before you ever let me hear any music of yours. So you're just in the stream and, you know, just hanging out. And in the Twitch stream that I have, I offer feedback. So what that is people can submit their music and I can tell them what I think about it. I can, you know, give them constructive feedback if they want it. That sort of thing, right? So I allowed people to do that in my Twitch stream. And then you started submitting your music and you quickly you quickly gained a reputation as the person who nobody wanted to follow. So you gained the reputation as somebody because you would send this stuff that was probably like 80 to 85% done. And if you've ever listened to Mason's music, which I highly, highly encourage you to do, it's incredible. I mean, the production is insane. I mean, these are not freaking just songs. These are musical art. This is musical art. Like, this is really what it is. And what would happen is that Mason would send this stuff that's like 85% done and would just like blow everybody out of the water. And like, people would be like, oh, I don't want to follow that. It was so good. And so you developed this reputation. And you were such an active member of my Discord. How has being in this community of musicians, because one of the things that I talked about with Bad Snacks, who was on this show a couple of weeks ago, is the pandemic was terrible. I mean, there's no doubt the pandemic was horrible. But what ended up happening is that it created this community of musicians and producers and artists on Discord because we, and on Twitch as well, because, we couldn't do shows. We couldn't go out and do live events. And so what people would do is that they would do their shows on Twitch. Well, that created a community within Discord and Twitch. And I joined that community. You joined that community.
Yeah.
Has being part of that community helped you as a musician? Has it helped you personally? And if it has, how?
Well, first off, let me just say that it made me so sad when you stopped streaming because that was, for a while, was one of my main sources of feedback, was just going on your stream and just seeing your reaction, seeing the reaction of chat. Not necessarily always just looking for criticism, but like just sort of feeling that people were paying attention and sort of having a reaction to it. But as far as the community goes, yeah, I think actually the lockdown was kind of a godsend for me, because before I had kind of struggled to find a place in kind of the musical circles I was in. That was kind of the part of the whole reason I was in and out of school, not knowing really what place my music was going to have. And then I come across Bad Snacks' community and like your community, Jay Herlock, Annie Elise. And these people had their own sort of bubbles that allowed me to kind of sort of be present, show up, like contribute with my music, and kind of feel like I had a place. And that was really important to me and gave me a lot of motivation going forward.
Yeah, I'm going to get to streaming again eventually. I just don't know when. The thing is, I didn't have time. I just simply didn't have time to do it.
I completely understand.
Yeah. I liked streaming. I really did, and I loved listening to music and giving feedback. I liked the fact that people cared about what I had to say. I mean, when I started the stream, I didn't think that anybody would care about what my feedback was. But I will say, and this is not like self-promo, I don't like to self-promo on my own show, but I do have a Discord, and I'll link to it in the YouTube description if you're listening to it on YouTube. And I can offer feedback there. So if people want feedback on their music, they can still send it, and I will offer feedback whenever I have time to do it. So I'm curious, because when somebody listens to your music, the very first thing they're going to think is, my God, this must have took forever, because there's so much detail in your music. There's so much going on, and some of your tracks are a little long too, and it doesn't follow the typical pop music form either. I mean, like I said before, I mean, these are not like really just straight up songs. These are like pieces of music. I mean, this is like a musical artwork. How long does it typically take for you to finish a track?
It really depends, because the way my workflow is, I will have periods when I'm working intensely, and I'll have periods where I'm just not working at all. So the initial release of The Other Sound took me, like all 6 songs took me about let me count, from February, March, April, May. So about like 4 or 5 months, 4.5 months.
4.5 months? That's it?
Well, yeah, but the thing is, with that release, I was so rushed because I was so excited at the whole, because this was really the first time that I was seriously making music in the DAW.
Mm-hmm.
So I just whizzed through that stuff. I like threw paint at the canvas, did not know what I was doing really, as far as like mixing, making everything sound clear and coherent. And it was just really rushed. By contrast, some of the other stuff I've released has taken me much longer to get an idea of and flesh out.
That is something that I've noticed, because I know when I first started out, which was 20 years ago now, I know I'm aging myself, but when I first started out, it didn't take me long to make a track. Like, it would take me, I could make a track in a few days, right? I could finish a whole song in a week. Now, you would think because I'm more experienced, oh, it would take me less time. It actually takes me more time now.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're paying attention to more, right? There's more attention to detail. You're more self-critical as you get older because you know what to listen for.
Yeah, for me, like, although at the same time, it's kind of an offset because, well, I'm kind of paying attention to certain details as far like more detail as I progress and gain more chops. I'm also at the same time speeding up my workflow and kind of giving myself a system for how I want to do things, like how I want to change the levels and the balance is never always just so simple as, oh, drag the fader up and down. No, I was like, all right, well, I do it in specific increments first, and then they get progressively smaller as I start to fine tune and get more and more detailed as to where it fits just right. And so when the more I zoom in, the longer it really takes for me to flesh out those details.
Isn't that the craziest thing, though? Because I go through I literally experience the same thing. As I've gained experience, my workflow is faster. So various production techniques don't take as long, right? Yeah. But at the same time, it just takes longer to finish something because I'm a lot more picky. That's what it is. It's not that I'm slower, I'm just pickier.
Yeah. And I'm also just like a perfectionist, like on principle, like in all aspects of everything, just not just music even. So you take that personality trait and then apply it to a setting where you're really focused in and fine tuning details on a creative level, on a technical level in music. Then it can either be like, you can either be torturing yourself or you can be having like the time of your life, just like really zoning in and kind of not really thinking about anything else.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cause I think what can determine whether or not somebody has the natural talent to do this, cause let's keep it a stack. Not everybody does. Okay. But like, I think you can really determine if somebody has the natural talent to do it if they have good taste. All right. Yeah. Now, what I mean by that is if you're like just starting out as a producer, like let's say you have only been producing for 2 months and you just got your first DAW and you're just starting out, right? Well, you're still going to have good taste. That, so you're going to know that you're not very good. Okay. So if you start off and you have good taste, and let's say you don't have the chops, you don't have the skills, you're going to know that you don't have the skills. You're going to know that you don't have the chops. You're going to know that the music you're making at that particular time is not lining up with your standard of what's good and what's not. The people that aren't who just don't have the talent to do this are people who don't have a sense of what's good and what's not. And they don't know if what they're making is good or not. You know what I mean? Yeah. And yeah, that can develop over the course of time. Because look, no lie, 15 years ago, the music that I was making, I thought was pretty good. And then I listen to it now and it's awful. All right. That can happen. But at the same time, there was still a sense of, okay, this is not yet ready for prime time. I still, there was a sense that I had that it wasn't. Do you go through that same thing where, is that why sometimes you are picky? Because that's me.
Well, here's my thing about like the whole taste thing. I don't necessarily think there's like good taste versus bad taste. I think it's just like, all right, well, what music were you around growing up? And what do you gravitate towards in terms of like your value system and what you're hearing, and like the people you've been around, what they listen to. And it's just like what your ear is accustomed to, what you're comfortable with. And like, well, whether it's good or not, that's for you to decide. And when you're making your own music, because you're basically measuring yourself up to like your influences, your taste. That's essentially your reference material. When other people judge you, whether they call it good or not, that doesn't really matter, because that's just noise.
You think so?
That's just outside criticism that's like based in their own perspective, and you can listen to it. And I think it's perfectly valid to listen to that noise from outside. And I think it's very.
I don't know if I'd say it's noise.
Well,
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's kind of like if people don't like your music, then you do have to change it. Or you have to at least improve it.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can.
I mean, I guess it depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, if you're making music as a hobby, then I guess not. But I mean, if you're making music to try to make a career, then I think people would have to like your music. If you're going to make, if people are going to pay money to listen to it, then I would think they would have to like it.
My philosophy is whatever you make, somebody's going to like it, because
very true.
Because you can't create out of a vacuum. You're pulling from your influences, and you're not the only one who likes those influences.
Oh, like, gosh, no.
Like, I'm 100% sure I'm not the only person who likes Jacob Collier, Animal Collective, Kishibashi, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
You are not.
Because I know for certain I'm not the only person who likes those things. And so knowing that, I can make music with the people in mind that have that audience. And I can also make the music for the people around me. And so I have multiple groups of people in mind that I can consider when I'm making my music. It's like, all right, who am I talking to? And that's just how I think about it.
So you're agreeing. So you are agreeing with me, whether you know it or not, because basically you're thinking, okay, I have a target audience, which that's actually what you're supposed to do as an artist, right? You're supposed to have a target audience.
Yeah,
and so, true. You know, you have a target audience and your goal is to make music. Of course, you want to make music that's authentic to you. I think that's what an artist is supposed to do. Because if you're not making music that's authentic to you, it's not going to be any good, right? People are going to tell when you're faking. You can't fake the funk, right? But
of course
the thing is, though, is that you have a target audience and you're making music that's authentic to you, but also your job is to make music that appeals to your target audience, the people who may also like the artists that you like, the target audience that you feel would enjoy your music. If they just ain't feeling it, if they don't like it, then I think it would be wise to go back to the drawing board, try to figure out what it is they didn't like. A lot of times it's something technical, you know, because I tell people all the time, you know, if you are in the business of making music professionally, okay, no, look, there's nothing wrong with having a hobby. There's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, a lot of my friends, music is a hobby, and music is a wonderful hobby. It really is. But if you are trying to make a career, that's a different story. Because at that point, you've gone from doing something you like to do to creating a product for people to consume. Now, it could be a niche audience. It could be a wide audience. But at the end of the day, once you've determined who your audience is, I think it is your job to make music that they're going to want to spend money on, that they're going to want to spend money on the tickets to go see you perform or whatever the case is. Now, I think you do a great job of that. Because here's the thing, I'm not even going to lie. I'm not really a big Jacob Collier fan, but I really like your music. So if you're winning me over, and I'm not even really a fan of Jacob Collier, then, I mean, I think you're doing a pretty good job. I think you are on your way to really knocking the socks off of your target audience.
That whole question, it's just like a huge balancing act.
Oh, yeah.
And like a really big question that I have to struggle with every time I sit down to work, because
oh, you and I like, both, yeah.
And for me it's especially painful because I place a lot of, like, I stake a lot of my self-esteem in my music and just my self-worth. So not knowing whether or not people are gonna like what I make is really it causes me a lot of anxiety. So it's just like, all right, I have to be really sure that I feel good about what I'm doing, about the end result, which also, that's kind of the whole reason I wanted to revisit The Other Sound to begin with, because when I released it, I didn't know what I was doing, and without really any marketing strategy or knowledge of like how it was going to be received or foresight. So I just kind of put it out, and I was disappointed at the result. And I came back to it a couple years later, and I listened to it again. And I was like, I've gotten so much better at like mixing and production just in general since then. I'm just gonna look at those sessions again and do it again and see if I can really just sort of clarify what I was trying to say.
So you didn't feel as though the first version of The Other Sound represented you anymore?
No, I think there was a specific message behind it that I was trying to get at, but I didn't really enunciate what I was trying to say with enough clarity.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, as far as having good taste, right? I mean, your goal was to express one thing, but you just didn't have the skill at the time to express it.
Well, I think that's a different thing than taste. I think that's like, all right, well, it's just ear for detail, and
yeah, I guess taste is the wrong word. I think
it's like ear, like that's what
a good ear. Yeah.
That's what I've heard.
That's a better term for it. Yeah,
that's what I've heard a lot of sort of high up in the upper echelons of the industry, the professionals sort of say ear a lot more than I hear the word taste.
I think ear is better.
Especially, I mean, in terms of like just technical matters, that's what I hear.
Exactly. I listen to your stuff. I mean, it sounds like you're using a lot of live instruments. Is that the case? Are you playing a lot? Yeah. How many instruments do you play?
Well, I play guitar, I play cello, percussion, I sing.
Yep.
And that's about all the instruments I play, like with any amount of like seriousness and confidence, I guess. I do have a little bit of like other stuff that I play like not so well, like mandolin, ukulele. And I
hear bass. I hear like an upright bass in some of
that's
your
actually
music.
Cello, but what it is I manipulated it in the DAW to make it sound like an upright bass.
Oh, wow. That is very interesting.
See, yeah, DAW manipulation is like one of like the hallmarks, I guess, of my technique, is just like taking the sounds and manipulating the hell out of them just to make sure that it serves its purpose in the arrangement to the most degree of effectiveness it can.
Absolutely. How many tracks does your music typically consist of? Because I mean, I'm listening to this must be like the 200 track or
well, it's not that far off. It's like around 120 to 140 for The Other Sound. on average.
Wow. I was expecting more.
Yeah. One of the songs I'm working on right now is like 150, but that's like the most that I've ever done.
I'm thinking at least 80 are vocals.
You wouldn't be that far off.
Because you have big choirs of sound. I mean, I am very interested in getting an idea of what your process is. Can you take us through your process from just kind of a general start to finish? Let's say you're going to work on a brand new work. Do you start with lyrics? Do you start with an idea? Take us through it.
That's the whole problem, because it's different every time. I can start any number of ways. When I start with the lyrics, I'll always have a form in mind, usually. And if I don't have a form in mind from the outset, I'll generate one like pretty early on.
So when you say form, you're talking about, okay, here's the A section, here's what, A, B, A form or whatever. Okay, got it.
I'll take one of the songs on The Other Sound, for instance, I Will Be Your May. The way I conceived that was like, all right, I want to have 3 main sections, like beginning, middle, end. And it's going to be like A prime, B, A double prime, or something like that. And like the A sections are going to be like sort of this Cloud 9 dreamy verse thing. And then like the B section is going to be like this really rhythmic instrumental bridge with a lot of like a drama and build up and like tension and release and big cathartic moment, and I really wanted to do something like that. So once I had that in mind, I was like, all right, I wrote the verse, had the verse structures, and then I kind of wanted to flesh out the concept for the track as far as like what it was going to be doing in terms of rhythm. So I was like following the lyrics. Because I'm pretty sure I Will Be Your Maid was generated primarily from the lyrics. So basically I had to okay.
So with you wrote the lyrics before you ever even wrote the song.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had the lyrics, I had the form, and from there I was like, all right, I'm gonna have this sort of metrical modulation concept. So there's like the song kind of goes back and forth between 2 different tempos. So you have like 50 BPM and 70 BPM, and it's constantly flip-flopping like throughout the song between those 2 tempos. And it like in the A sections, like you can barely tell just because it's so like aloof and like freeform and arrhythmic. But like in the B section, like the bridge, like I make it a point to kind of play with the idea of meter in such a way that, all right, 16th note septuplets in quarter note equals 50 is the same as 16th note quintuplets in quarter note equals 70. That's the same exact length of division. So It's like, all right, metrical play between that, and then use that to sort of create like this drama that unfolds and increases tension and then releases it when you go like septuplets in 70 and then quintuplets in 50. That's like a huge shift. And I'm not even changing like the tempo paradigm. I'm just using 50 and 70. I'm not even speeding up or slowing down. You just feel like it's doing that, but the tempo never really changes from that paradigm.
Yeah, that was what I gathered from that piece in particular, because one thing that I love about the way you go about making music is that you have found a way to take your vast knowledge in musical theory and apply that to the emotions that you're trying to convey. Because that song, I Will Be Your May, that record in particular is really about daydreaming and stuff like that. And then it goes to anxiety and stuff like that. And you found a way of using meter to communicate that.
Yeah, it's like, it's about sort of fantasy, escape, sort of spiritual release, all these different themes that I was kind of dealing with in my life at that point. And yeah, I kind of impressed myself with that track. It's just as far as like what I was able to achieve with the arrangement and like just the concept of it. So yeah, I think to this day, that's like one of my favorite songs that I've ever made. Just because of like how like effectively and efficiently I was able to pull that off, because that only took me like about a month to do.
Oh wow, that's really impressive. If anybody were to ever listen to that song, especially the reworked version that's going to be coming out soon, people would not think that even a rough version of that record would have only taken a month. So that really truly is impressive. So every episode of this show, we always ask the question,
what's going to be the toy you're going to ask me about?
oh, of course, you know it.
I know it. I watched your podcast, Craig.
Absolutely. What is the origin story? How did Mason Johnston go from a little kid playing basketball in the driveway to the great musician that Mason Johnston is today?
Basketball. That was not what I was expecting. All right. Okay.
I don't know if you played basketball in the driveway, but I
might have played it like a couple of times. I will say the one thing I did play with when I was a kid was Bionicles, like Lego Bionicles. That was my jam.
I remember that. I never had any, but yeah, I heard about that. I didn't know you were old. Yeah. I didn't know you were old enough to remember Bionicles. That was like when I was a kid.
That's funny because Bionicles are actually like a big part of my origin story. Like that's kind of how I got my my aptitude for I guess structure and story was from that whole thing. But yeah, that has nothing to do with music. Anyways, I guess so I started out when I was like 2. Like, okay, so I had to take a second to look at the pictures on my wall, because there is a picture of me when I was 2 years old at Christmas, in bed asleep with a guitar. When I was like 2 years old, and I guess that was it, because now like guitar is like the instrument I play the most, even though I probably spent most of my training on cello, which I started at like 4. So yeah, I've been playing cello for a long time, in the classical training, that whole thing. Pretty early on, I discovered I had perfect pitch.
Oh, shocker. Mason Johnston has perfect pitch. That's a shock.
And so I kind of was annoying to everybody about it.
You still are. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding, Mason.
Oh, no, I don't doubt it. I believe you,
kidding. Craig. Mason and I are very good friends, so we joke with each other a lot, y'all.
Yeah. Craig's my sparring partner. Anyways, yeah. And I was doing the classical thing up until I graduated high school. Really.
Were you in the school orchestra?
Oh yeah, I was in a school orchestra, and I was and still am very much a rebel when it comes to that type of stuff. So I would like actively cause issues to the music directors.
Did you play sports?
Well, I played ultimate frisbee in high school.
Oh, cool.
Which unfortunately I had to quit because the something unfortunate had happened my sophomore year. The Atlanta Symphony Orchestra got locked out, and thus the youth orchestra was canceled for half the season.
I remember that.
You remember that. That was like, what was that, like 6-7 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And so I did ASYO for the second half of that season. And we had double the rehearsals, which meant I didn't have time for Ultimate Frisbee anymore. But anyways, yeah, I continued. I started composition at like when I was in like 7th grade. Basically, I had met the composer Michael Kurth.
Wow.
Who is a if any of you guys don't know, he's kind of a local Atlanta superstar in the classical music world. But he plays bass in the Atlanta Symphony. He's had multiple works commissioned by the Atlanta Symphony, and he took me on as his first composition student. And he was probably my best teacher. Taught me most of what I know about just general composition without really even trying to. He just kind of showed me a lot of stuff. Gave me comp tickets to a lot of Atlanta Symphony performances. Let me read scores along with the orchestra. Kind of did that kind of thing. Just kind of giving me an inside look into what the whole thing was like. And then I actually, I'm going to brag for a minute. I got the opportunity to get one of my pieces played by the Atlanta Symphony because I won like this competition when I was a sophomore.
Oh, wow.
And Michael was smart and told me, hey, you got to register for ASCAP before they perform your piece so they can report it. And they did, and I did, and they gave me a bunch of money for it. I'm not going to say how much. But it was a lot of money for me at the time. I'm
sure it was.
Yeah, and basically I ended up at University of North Carolina School of the Arts for my last 2 years of high school, studying composition, and around that time I was kind of starting to get like disillusioned with classical music because a couple of things happened. I started working with dancers a lot more, and they were preferring sort of more electronic music. And so I found myself sort of gravitating more and more towards the digital audio workspace, and that type of stuff. And also I discovered that a couple of friends from back in Atlanta that I had just moved away from were in a band, and they were making like some of the craziest music I'd ever heard, like stuff beyond even my comprehension. And I wanted to learn about it. So as soon as I graduated, I came home, started going to their shows. I enrolled at New England Conservatory because I had already committed prior to graduation. And I just decided, you know what? This whole classical music thing really isn't for me. So I spent a semester there, came back to Atlanta for about a year, formed a band with two of the guys that were in that band I mentioned earlier. They're called Fuiste. And so we formed a band called Big Motion, where I was playing electric cello, and then there was a guy on bass, and there was a guy on drums. We were playing this really weird, like math rocky stuff. And I wrote some of my best songs in 2018, partly as a result of that collaboration. And I also got the opportunity to get Ableton and get my feet wet with that.
So this was during your time at NEC, right?
Well, I was on leave from NEC at that point. But I went back to NEC in 2019, and and I did another semester where I was basically trying out different ensembles and stuff in the contemporary improvisation department. So I did like 5 ensembles. I was in 2 choirs. I was in a songwriters workshop, a Jewish music ensemble, and the most fun thing I ever did there, which was the Monde West African ensemble with Bala Kuyate, who is
wow,
one of like this legendary jelly master from Mali, and he's just an insane musician. He's crazy. It was an absolute honor to work with him. And then I made the other sound while I was up there. I really was focused on my composition chops. And between that and my ensemble stuff, I really didn't have much of a social life during that semester. And whenever I would show up around groups of people, they would just give me these weird looks because they all knew I was making this crazy music for some reason. And they were like,
really?
oh, that's the out kid who's away for 2 semesters. And so I felt like kind of an outcast at NEC, and I decided to leave for good. I came back, released the other sound, and now this is the part that's kind of hard to talk about because after I came back, I kind of had a pretty big mental health crisis. Which landed me in the hospital.
You left NEC. That's what NEC does, dude. That's the same as Juilliard. I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, it was like, yeah. I was like, I left without really a plan, and I released the other sound with the expectation that it was going to like pop off because I, of course, didn't know what I was doing. And it didn't, and I just collapsed. I guess.
So because other sound, because it didn't do very well, that's what led to your mental health crisis, right?
Well, there were other things that I won't really go into that were happening at the time as well, and a lot of it had to do with just kind of like I was like, whatever. I'm not going to go into it. Anyways, after that happened, I had to take about a year to really recover from that. And that was what the lockdown really helped me to do, was it kind of gave me an excuse to sort of, I guess, isolate and really kind of self-reflect, get my bearings straight, allow me to build my confidence up sort of alone so that I can sort of face society without dealing with too much external pressure of like trying to conform to like I guess expectations of living and working in person environments. And I enrolled at Berkeley College of Music at the start of 2020 for the fall semester. And that basically introduced me to Discord, and I did a couple of other projects. Then I encountered the Bad Snacks community, which is where y'all come in. And I started doing the beat battles. And you've heard me tell this story, but the first one I did was of your samples. Because you had won the previous competition, and I started with your samples. I was like, all right, this is the first time I'm making something that is not really just like a song and more with like samples and synthesis, and that was really a step out of my comfort zone, and it was a big challenge just making that type of music and appealing to that type of audience, which was challenging because it's like, you know, that like the Bad Snacks community and just the beat making community in general, like they have a different I guess sort of set of things that they look for in music. And I found
compared to who?
Compared to just like like the crowds I usually hang around, like the classical crowd, and then like the the underground rock crowd, and like it's like they all have good taste. Like they know when they recognize like good music. It's just like when I make stuff for them, it's like, all right, I need to really it's like I need to figure out what, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is like, all right, I need to figure out what appeals to them versus just like me getting my feet wet in the style and finding a voice and reconciling that is still to this day is pretty hard. It's a tough balance because I have like it's like, yeah, I like the whole idea of like getting my feet wet in the style and whatnot, and that stuff was really useful in helping me sort of get my production chops up. But at the same time, I'm also like hyper competitive and perfectionistic, and it's a competition in the context where it's like, all right, there is a pretext that there is a winner. And that was a big motivating factor for me to enter that competition, is like, I want to win. But,
absolutely.
Yeah. But anyways, entering these beat battles was really great for me because it allowed me to really pay more attention to like minute details of my mixing process, my workflow. And I got so much better with each one that I did. And another, I got like a dance project that I started doing, and just now that's kind of where I'm at right now, in terms of just like my music history. I know it's a lot, but like
it's really, it's interesting. What's very interesting, and you're not the only person who has really spoken this way, but every guest I've had on this show, we all tend to think our path to where we are is so unique. And when I first started doing this podcast, I thought my story was super unique. I thought, well, clearly nobody has my story. And look, everybody's going to have differences. I mean, everybody's story is unique in some sense, but there are so many similarities between your story and mine and how I came up, because I came up through the classical route too. I was a classically trained pianist. I didn't go to New England Conservatory. I didn't even get into Berkeley, let alone New England Conservatory. But, I was, I was disillusioned by the kind of parochial system of the classical music world too. And, I didn't really ever felt like I fit in. A lot of that was racism, let's be real about it. But, I didn't feel like I fit in. I was too, for me, I was, especially when I was at university, more so than junior college, which was where I started. I was too cool for the classical kids, but I was too much of a nerd for the popular kids. Yeah. And so I didn't fit in anywhere. Like I didn't fit in with the people, I mean, I made friends with some of the athletes. I made friends with some of the fraternity people and all of that kind of stuff. But I made friends with folks in the classical world too, but I didn't ever feel like I fit in anywhere. I went through a horrible depression when I was at university, and it ultimately led me to leaving classical music. And what's funny is that I ended up winning a competition too. I wrote a symphonic piece and won a competition in 2004 and had a piece of mine played by a symphony orchestra, the Moravian Philharmonic in the Czech Republic.
Oh, wow.
So Yeah, I had a piece of
So we,
music.
so
I'll
we.
send you the link. It's actually
Oh yeah,
up
I'd
on
love to hear it.
YouTube. Yeah, it's not a great piece, but I was happy with it. I was 19 when I wrote it, and I won an orchestration competition
Nice.
in that. So I come from the same route that you did. And what's funny is that when I started producing, the people in the classical music world could not have cared less. My professors couldn't have cared less. Only one, and that was well, two of them, and that was the professor of piano who was like, my daddy away from home, pretty much, because I had majored in piano performance, and he was like somebody who was supportive, and his
Mm.
wife, right? His wife also taught piano at the university too. And they were really the only two people that cared or were supportive about my pursuits to do production. Everybody else was like, there's no future in that. You do classical music. And so I was really doing it to make my family happy, to make people around me happy and stuff like that. But I wasn't happy anymore doing it because the passion in classical, and I love classical music, I still do,
Oh
but it
yeah.
was stamped out of me,
Mm.
right? And I would imagine that your time, and nothing against the New England Conservatory, it's one of the most prestigious institutions in the world,
Oh yeah.
but environments like that really can stamp the passion out of you. It really can, because it's ultra competitive. Everybody's kind of there to, nobody wants their spot taken. And it's just, you're running from lions the moment you step foot into the building, you know? And I mean, that's what it feels like to a lot of people who I've talked to, who went to Juilliard, who went to Peabody and other conservatories as well. So I can understand that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's less that I felt intimidated by just the general amount of like skill in the institution or prestige in the institution. Like I felt like I could hang there. Um just like as a force of music, as
Yeah,
it
but
were.
see, the other students don't want you to hang. They don't want you to hang. It's like people want you to fail there. That's what it felt like when I was at university.
Mm. Yeah, I get that. Also, I kind of like. I think my general disillusionment just came as and sort of manifested as me just sort of like opening my mind to other areas
Mm-hmm.
because just like up through like a junior year of high school, I was convinced that like music, like sort of like outside classical, was just kind of like not really worthy of my attention.
Mm-hmm.
As shameful as that sounds, um, but
Well, it's
like
what you're taught. I mean,
yeah,
that's their
it's
attitude about pop music. That
yeah,
is their attitude. That's especially their attitude about hip hop.
oh
Boy, that
yeah.
is really their attitude about hip hop. That
You know how shocked I was when Kendrick Lamar won the Pulitzer?
I was shocked too.
I was in complete shock because like that was 2017. I came from like at that point I still wasn't fully out of classical music. I hadn't said like F this yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um uh and like I just saw that and I was like, damn, no pun intended.
Yeah, it's
uh
crazy
it
because
was yeah.
and you're in Atlanta too. So hip hop is
Yeah.
huge in Atlanta. You
Yeah,
got Metro Boomin out here. You
yeah, and
got
I
Sunny
somehow
Digital and people like that. And
exactly like
what people don't
Outcast.
realize, yeah, Outcast.
And the thing is,
What
I
people
was
don't realize that those people are incredible musicians. They
they're
really are.
great. They're great. And the one of my biggest regrets about just my the way I was brought up is that I was sheltered from all of that all the way through high school. Um just like I had no idea about that scene in Atlanta. Like
Hmm.
until I came back. Um so it's just like it's just like
It really,
I really
is.
wish one of my
It's like a whole nother world, right?
yeah, like one of the things I want to do like other than music is that I want to, I suppose, just find a way to let people know, especially in the classical music world, is that other perspectives from your own are valid and should be paid attention to, considered. And I just wish people had more of a holistic approach to thinking about music, and just like, all right, and think about it more deeply, more critically, and just take it more seriously. And just in all its aspects, because like, all right, when you like when you devote yourself so strongly to the perspective you were brought up in, and this can apply to all areas of life, but I'm talking about it mostly in terms of like a classical music upbringing and classical music training. So when you're so entrenched in it and you're so devoted to it, it can turn you into this sort of this gatekeeping force where you're just like, all right, well,
this shouldn't go here, and yeah,
like, yeah, this shouldn't, like this type of music is what is causing problems for this generation, and like
Jesus.
that whole rhetoric, like it's like, and these people don't even realize it necessarily, that they're acting this way. Like I certainly didn't. Like I just kind of like was just acting this way on principle and not really being self-aware about it. And to a lot of my friends outside of the classical music world, that just came off as me being like a pretentious asshole. And I wondered why I didn't have any friends outside of the classical music world. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, that's why.
But what you've been able to do is that you've now gotten to the point to where you still have an appreciation for classical music, which we both do. But at the same time, you now also have an appreciation for the Atlanta music scene and for, you know, the hip hop and R&B and pop scene. And you are able now to kind of mesh those two disciplines together. And you've been able to do that. And of course, you know, the rock music scene here in Atlanta as well, which is vibrant. You've been able to mesh all of that together into something that is truly beautiful and truly memorable. I cannot wait until the release of this new version of The Other Sound, because you really do have a very bright future. Mason, this has been a wonderful, amazing interview. Thank you so much for doing this, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Craig. Yeah, this was great.
And that is going to do it for this week's episode of Studio Chatter. Until next time, you all stay blessed and stay safe.